Are your children better off with you? If you were asked that question by a judge or a court expert, an evaluator of some kind, what would your answer to that be? And if your answer to that is yes, which I think for a lot of us it is, especially if you're dealing with a high conflict or narcissistic person on the other side, then the question that inevitably follows is why? They're wanting you to give your justification for that. And what would you say? And how do you know that what you have to say is going to be the thing that will influence the court? So before we dive into this topic, let me just remind you that if you like this content and you find it helpful, don't forget to hit like on the video. Also, subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. And please feel free to share this on social media or with anybody that you know of that may be struggling with this type of thing. When we're talking about, are the children better off? We tend to think of parenting in the context of who's the better parent. And let's face it, we go into court, we sling all this mud at each other in custody situations in an effort to what? Prove who is the better parent. It's how we come at the entire process. It's really how the entire process is set up in certain ways because it pits parents against each other. But in reality, that's not really what the court is judging by. Okay, the court isn't judging who's the better parent, and whoever's the better parent, that's the person that I'm going to give more parenting time to, not how their decisions are made. Okay, what they're looking for in the first place, the very first primary foundational thing is, are both of these parents adequate? Okay. And that's kind of a specific term that's used to say, okay, you meet their basic human needs. You feed them, you clothe them, you house them, you don't beat them. All the primary things that we all need to sort of function. It doesn't mean that you're the most loving, nurturing, patient, best providing, whatever adjective you want to put on it. It doesn't mean all of those things. It means, are you adequate in that you are meeting children's basic needs? They're not being physically, sexually abused. Everything is fairly quote unquote normal. Although I hate that word. I hate the word normal because I don't think there really is such a thing as normal. We are all so very different. But again, that level of adequacy, because when we talk about best interest of the children and what the definition of that is, and I talk about this a lot where it does vary state to state some, but the basic premise that's common across all of them is health, safety, welfare, right? If we're meeting health, safety, and welfare of the children, then everything else kind of becomes an equal playing field. And this is why we see things like somebody will start off with a DV, a domestic violence or protective order, whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. And then that accusation doesn't stick. And then people end up with like a 50-50 parenting plan if they live in a 50-50 state. Or some states will have like a primary parent and then the other parent will have like every other weekend and a weekday overnight. Again, that part varies state to state depending on the state's laws and policies. But in the first instance, they're looking for that level of adequacy that's referred to in the best interest of the children. Once that is sort of checked off, if we say, okay, let's look at best interest of the children, both parents meet all of these health, safety, and welfare kind of basic needs. Okay, that box is checked. Now we go on to other issues such as, okay, logistically, how far apart are the parents? What is everybody's work schedule? Where has the child lived and gone to school? Who's historically been their primary parent? What's the current parenting schedule? And they'll start getting the lay of the land from there. And also, what is that state's policy? Like in California, we're a 50-50 state. So if we check the box of adequacy, for the most part, you can expect people to come out of court with a 50-50 in the vast majority of circumstances. Now, again, not all states default to a 50-50. Many of them do, and I think more and more of them are trending that direction, but it's not true of all of them. So it's important to know how your state, kind of leans in regard to that. And a simple Google search will usually give you the answer to that you're looking for. Once we are past that level of adequacy and we kind of look at the state's policy. And then again, like, let's say I'm going to use California as an example, like we're 50-50 state. So if we have a parent that meets that level of adequacy, and then we're a 50-50 state, we're going to look at giving the parents equal timeshare. But then it's like, okay, well, what if they live 2 hours apart? Okay, well, that shifts the whole dynamic, right? You can't, if you have a school age child, you really can't do a 50-50 parenting plan 2 hours apart. You can get close because you can give one of the parents more summer, more breaks, more that kind of thing. And you can get pretty close to it, but you can't get exactly a 50-50 in that situation. You can't do a week on, week off if one parent is 2 hours from where the child goes to school. So those are the other things that the court starts to look at. But I think the big mistake that most people make, especially early on in this, is that comparison factor where they are slinging mud and trying to prove that they are a better parent than the other parent. Now, look, I know sometimes we have major safety concerns, right? We have, alcoholics, and we have abusive people, and we have all of those things. And for the vast majority of cases, I'm not referring to that, right? That's a limited number of the cases. Most of the cases we're talking about these types of I'm a better parent than they are types of issues where somebody thinks the children are going to bed too late, or they're giving them sugar, or they're letting them watch a device too much, or, this parent drinks around them too much, or whatever it is. And honestly, we have autonomy in our parenting. Parenting is a constitutional right. You'll hear me say that over and over. My late husband, Thomas, used to say it incessantly. Parenting is a constitutional right. So nobody can tell you that your kids have to go to bed at a certain time, even the other parent. Like, you have autonomy within your home during your parenting time. So the irony of the situation is we're slinging all this mud trying to prove that we're the better parent. But really, all you have to do is prove that you are an adequate parent. Okay. So especially if you're being accused of not being an adequate parent, then that really is what you need to shore up. If somebody says you're not an adequate parent and you turn around and say, oh yeah, you aren't either, does that really help the situation? No. And yet that's what judges are dealing with almost all the time. But if somebody said to me, you're not an adequate parent, I would say, really? Okay, well, I own a home. My children have lived here for X number of years. I drive them to school every day. I pick them up. I cook meals for them. I make sure they get dinner every evening. I help with homework. I do all these things. I attend every basketball game they have every week. I have, all the things that I did when my kids were young. My kids are grown now. That's not my life now, but that was my life at one point. And that's where we need to focus on what is our involvement with the children. What are we doing? How are we showing up as an adequate parent? That's the counter argument to somebody saying that you aren't. Turning around and saying, oh yeah, well, I'm a better parent than they are, doesn't really fix the problem. Now, again, I think if we're dealing with abuse and alcoholism and different severe things, the context of that looks a little bit different, okay? Because you have to address safety concerns. Again, that goes back to best interest of the child, right? Health, safety, and welfare. Okay, if we have one of those concerns, that overrides everything else. Okay, but once we can check that box, then we get down into the adequacy issues, and you're fighting a battle that is the wrong battle. You're fighting over who's the better parent, and you really need to be proving that you are the adequate parent or what your involvement is. And this is where I start a lot of times with parents that have been accused of things like domestic violence, and they have protective orders, or they have supervised visitation, and there's been all these emergency things or whatever. It's like, look, the first thing you want to do is show the court that you're doing everything you can to address all of the concerns. I talked to somebody this week who's just like, yep, I proactively took anger management, and I proactively got in a parenting class, and I proactively, did this course or that course, and all of those things that they're doing proactively. Whereas I see a lot of parents go, well, I shouldn't have to do that. I don't have anger issues. They're just accusing me of it. Okay, well, what better way to show the court that you're trying to eliminate even the possibility of that being a consideration? It just completely takes it off the table, right? When you're going, look, I'm proactively just doing this. Thomas used to tell this story about he had a client that the other parent kept saying that he drank too much. And he said, I don't have a drinking problem. I drink socially. We've always drank around our kids, beer, wine, whatever. It's always been that way. And Thomas said, you need to go to AA. And the client said, I don't believe in AA. And Thomas said, well, the court believes in AA, and the court is believing mom's concerns. So you need to go. And he was like, nope, and he ended up losing parenting time. And and that's just pride, right? That's just pride. It's like, what's more important to you? What is more important to you? The drinking, the denial of the fact that there's any problem in the way it might make you look, or the relationship with your kids. And a lot of times that's what this stuff comes down to. It's like, okay, what's more important to you? Your pride or relationship with your kids? Because I can tell you in the court system, if you choose your pride, you're going to lose that relationship every time. When we come into court, the number one thing we need to be thinking in our brain is humility. If I said to you, crawl across this strip of broken glass, and then I'll let you see your kids. And you said, why? And I said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to let you see them once you do it. If I'm holding all the cards and I've got your kids and I'm the one with the power, then either you're not going to see your kids or you're going to crawl across the broken glass. Now, I'm obviously giving you a, non-existent scenario that's extreme, but my point is that that's where you have to get your mindset, that whatever the court thinks you need to do to be able to see your children, you have to do. And I understand that sucks. Like it's our kid, right? It's my kid. Like, who are you to tell me? Like, I get feeling that way sometimes, but again, you've got to remember that once we invoke the court because we have a dispute with our co-parent, that court becomes the super parent and their decisions are what go. So that is not the person that you want to have having a negative view of you. So you want to come in and show what your involvement is, what your parenting style is like, how you have parented in the past, and address any significant concerns that the court has about your parenting, regardless of what the other parent is or isn't doing, right? I don't care so much about the other parent. I know they're the one making the accusations. I care about what is the judge thinking is going on at this point, because that's ultimately going to be your decision maker. I hope that helps give you some perspective on that issue. If you'd like more help with these types of issues, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's information on that page on my group coaching programs for moms and for dads. And there is also information on my VIP premium one-on-one coaching services. If you have something that's a little more complex, or you're just kind of in that stage where you really need that high level of support, then you can learn more about that there as well. So thanks for joining me. I will see you guys next time.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the